Matt, suppose somebody were to take their first steps into Scientology today. At what point would they be introduced to the concept of implants? This seems to crop up all over the place without ever being treated as a discrete subject in itself. Even when all the engrams have been cleared away and all the body thetans exorcised away, they are somehow still there, lurking in the background. They seem to fall into three categories. 1, current, this world abuses of power, psych ops, and so forth. 2, false ideas installed in us by the various extraterrestrial forces of old. 3, it's further implied that there will be a re-implanting of such ideas in the period after we die. Is there any explanation offered for how this is done? Who or what does the implanting? Where is it done? How is the thetan taken there? And what is the purpose of it? All right, Matt, thank you very much for asking me about this. Now, the fact of the matter is, I actually did write extensively about implants as a subject in my book, Scientology A to Xenu. So that is linked in the description to this and every single video I've ever produced. And I would really recommend that you take a look at it because there's an entire chapter in there about all of this, okay? And I am not going to repeat that entire chapter in answering this question, but I will address your points. Implants are basically kinds of engrams. Okay, and an engram in Dianetics and Scientology is a moment or incident containing pain and unconsciousness. It has to have those two elements. There has to be pain, and even if for a microsecond, there has to be a moment or longer, could be hours, could be days of unconsciousness. And that's what makes an engram an engram. And engrams are addressed with Dianetics. When you get Dianetic auditing, you go back and remember these times, blah, blah, blah. Well, implants are just sort of purposeful, concentrated pain and commands purposefully installed in a person in order to get them to act a certain way or get them to not act in a certain way, to refrain or restrain their behavior. So it's one of those two things. That's what implants are all about. And behavior is modified by belief, by what a person thinks. So the implants are to get a person thinking a certain way and thereby acting a certain way. For example, not leaving Earth. Not taking off, not going off and creating your own universe or making your own place or remembering your last lives or feeling a compulsion to have sex or to eat or to sleep or to worship Christ or to, have a religion. All of these things, according to L. Ron Hubbard, come from implants. And there have been millions and millions of implants that you have received. And by the way, given to other people too. All of us, through all of the various incarnations, through space and time, have been victims and victimizers. And both flows of that, doing both receiving and giving, mess you up. Hubbard says it's not just receiving an engram that will mess you up, but giving somebody else an engram is also going to mess you up because it's going to remind you of all the times you had received the engram. So it's this sort of vicious cycle that sort of feeds itself and keeps itself going, no matter which end you're on. And so this is kind of the basic idea of it. And so because they're engrams, once you go clear, you're not going to be accumulating those engrams anymore, at least on the first dynamic toward yourself. You still have all these body thetans to deal with, though. And every one of those body thetans that's attached to you has their own implants. Millions of them, just like you do. So the implant phenomena or the implant effect is compounded on you by all these body thetans that you're carrying around with you that you have to exorcise, right? That you have to get rid of. And of course, that's what the OT levels are all about. So you're not done with implants even after you're clear because you got to deal with all these body thetans. And the body thetans are kind of crazy, and their thoughts and your thoughts gel. They go together. You can't really easily tell the difference until you've gone through all of these OT levels. Okay, this is the theory behind all of this. So when you get up through OT level 7 and you've completed OT 7, all the body thetans are supposed to be gone. No more. It's just back down to you. Just you, the little snowflake, right? The little snowflake thetan. And you're clear now. And you don't have all these body thetans now. So implants will no longer actually have an effect on you the same way they used to. Because the only reason implants or engrams matter and are important, according to Hubbard, is because they accumulate. The later one relies on the earlier ones for its effectiveness. The earlier ones are the strong, heavy-duty ones. And the later ones are kind of, they could be strong, they could be heavy, but they don't have to be because they're re-stimulating, or they're pulling up the charge, the mass, the problems, the stress from the earlier incidents, okay? But if you've gone through and erased all those and don't have that charge anymore, and you haven't accumulated all that, you're not carrying that around with you anymore. Jacob Marley let go of his chains. Like, they're gone, right? From the Christmas Carol story, right? Like, if he wasn't any longer carrying around the sins of his past, then he'd be free. He'd be woohoo. He could go do whatever he wanted to do. And if you came and tried to lock him down and implant him again, you'd have a much harder time because you're dealing with a much more powerful spiritual entity. Okay, so that's the idea, and that's how it is that Scientologists think that by going up the bridge, they're proofing themselves up against all these traps and all these problems that they've been dealing with all this time. This is why Hubbard says that Scientology is the thing that's going to free you from all of these traps. It's going to empower you with knowledge and with auditing to get rid of the charge, so you no longer are compelled to repeat the commands of the implants that you've been given. And I hope all that makes sense. But that's kind of how Scientologists believe that they are becoming free of these implants. So I hope I'm clarifying here that implants are not different from the other kinds of things that people get audited on. And eventually, when you get up through OT level 7, you won't have any more of that. And the ability of the implanters to affect you will have been basically nullified. Unless, of course, you're a damn idiot and you forget it all again, or you just dive right in and try to get implanted again or something. I mean, you could do stupid stuff, but that's basically the idea. As far as who does it, where it's done, anywhere and everywhere. I mean, Hubbard talked about implant stations that existed in the Appalachian Mountains or in the Urals or the Caucasus Mountains. He talked about implant stations behind screens on Mars that make them, render them invisible. We can't see them or detect them. Same thing with Venus. I think he said there's some stuff on Venus. I think he talked about trains on Venus too, and whole societies on Venus. But Hubbard could always write this stuff off with, they have high-level technology that we don't have yet, so they're able to hide themselves or camouflage themselves so we can't detect or see them. And that's why we haven't run into anything on Mars, even though we've sent, explorers there and have mapped the entire surface of the planet and that kind of thing. So, so that's kind of the deal with that. And I go into a more detail about implants and about specific kinds of implants, because Hubbard has documented a lot of different kinds of implants. He talked about gorilla goals and airplane hangar goals, like, that you could get implants with goals implanted, He talked about helitrobus implants, and he talked about all these other things. I actually detail some of that in my book, but I'm not going to get into it here because I've already given basically the answer to the question. So anyway, there you go. Hope that helped.